So I'm watching CNN today, and I'm cracking up. I literally am cracking up. Now, I knew the drive-by media was going to try to do everything they could to avoid reporting that Hillary and the DNC bought and paid for and created that crap that got turned into intelligence that was used by the intelligence agencies to try to take out Donald Trump. But I never imagined, and I should have, I'm slipping, I never imagined that they would try to turn this around to prove that Trump was colluding with Russia. And that's what CNN is doing today. Greetings, my friend. It's so ridiculous. But then you have to stop. You have to stop and remember, do you know what the time, something like, let me get the times here that the media has spent. Greetings, folks. Rush Limbaugh here, the EIB network. Our telephone number is 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, the email address, lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. 1,000 minutes. This is calculations by our buddies at Newsbusters. 1,000 minutes have been spent. I don't know what the time frame of this is. 2017. 1,000 minutes combined focused on the Trump-Russia collusion. 20 seconds. The drive-by media yesterday spent 20 seconds total on the story. Now, this is not counting the New York Times. We're talking about cable. We're talking about broadcast outlets. 20 seconds yesterday on cable networks about Hillary and the DNC buying and paying for the so-called Trump dossier. 1,000 minutes versus 20 seconds. So you have to figure that people whose only diet of news is the drive-by media still don't know. They still don't know about this. They still think that Trump colluded with Russia. And so CNN, you know what CNN did today? This is so hilarious. I was watching, who was it? It was John Berman was their anchor. And they had a couple guests in there. And there was a story that hit from Politico. The headline is Assange, Trump-tied firm, sought WikiLeaks help before the election. What this means is apparently somebody working with Trump, I don't know, Cambridge Analytica. That's the Mercers. Apparently the dreaded and the evil Mercers attempted to call Julian Assange, say, hey, we'd like to see some of this stuff you're publishing. We'd like to see some of your Hillary emails. So CNN took that, and they're off to the races. And they say, they had Dan Pfeiffer on there. He's a former Clinton-era spokesman. Dan Pfeiffer said, now, we don't know for sure that Trump colluded with Russia, but now we do know that they wanted to. And that's their take on this entire episode. Now, the way to look at this in truth is, if WikiLeaks has this data, and we still don't know where they got it, the drive-bys are trying to tell us that the Russians hacked a DNC server, and then the Russians gave the results to WikiLeaks, which then published them, started dribbling them out, along with the Podesta emails, from, say, August of last year all the way through the election. Now, if Cambridge Analytica or whoever the firm working with Trump, if they called WikiLeaks and wanted to see the emails, how in the world do you get that they were colluding with Russia? They wouldn't have to call anybody to see the emails. They would have them. But this little factoid seems to escape the wizards of smart at CNN. I'm not kidding. It's surreal. It's alternative universe. CNN, and they did panel after panel. They were still doing it 2 hours after I first saw it today. Digging deep, trying to uncover every little rock and every stone to find out the evidence that the Trump campaign had indeed gotten hold of Julian Assange and asked Assange if they could see some of the Hillary emails that WikiLeaks was publishing already. Now, apparently, Assange, WikiLeaks, told Cambridge Analytica, no way. We don't share stuff. You can read it on our website. Why should we give it to you? It's right there on the website. So this little thing is being blown up to cover up the fact that Hillary, we now have people raising serious questions of treason, severe violations of federal campaign law, federal election law, by funding this kind of thing. But that's not the real concern. I mean, all those are real concerns. I still don't see Hillary Clinton going to jail, although there are people writing today that say if charges are ever brought, that a conviction would not be that difficult and that jail time is a feature of the sentencing for this kind of crime. But how many of you actually think Hillary Clinton's ever going to go to jail? Versus, I mean, how many of you want to see it? Lock her up, lock her up. I can see your hands being raised and lock her up, lock her up. But really, the real danger here, the real injustice here is that this phony, fake, plastic banana, good time rock and roller collection of crap was used by our intelligence agencies as the basis of an investigation into Trump collusion. It is the most outrageous thing. Not only is CNN doing stories on how this proves that Trump wanted to collude, we now have the various other drive-bys. I'll have examples for you here in mere moments of how the Republicans are also responsible for it. Or it's no big deal anymore because we're so far beyond this that the Trump dossier is irrelevant. Doesn't matter. There's nothing to see here. The drive-bys have their own text. Before we delve into that, I want to share something with you. This business of Jeff Flake and McCain and any number of other Republican senators who are standing up and voicing their opposition to Trump, their outrage. I shared with you a piece from Victor Davis Hanson 2 days ago, backing up a theory of mine. There isn't any disunity in the Republican Party. If you look at the percentage of Republican voters voting for Trump, Trump got 90% of the Republican vote, just like George W. Bush did. Romney got 93%. McCain got 90%. There isn't any split there. In terms of Republican voters, the split is in the establishment. And I've tried to tell everybody that if you look at overall voting records, you really don't find that big a split in House and Senate Republicans and the way they voted on Trump agenda items. Now, health care is a standalone, the repeal and replace Obamacare. The point that I have been making is the real problem these clowns have with Trump is they don't like his personality. They think he's coarse. They think he's a pig. They think he's rough around the edges. He's not collegial. He doesn't comport himself in the way of sophisticated members of the establishment. Well. Lifting the ban on PMSNBC, we have a soundbite from yesterday's Andrea Mitchell, NBC News Washington show, on which was her guest F. Chuck Todd, who is the moderator of Meet the Depressed. And she was talking about McCain and Corker and Flake and their criticisms of Trump. And she asked F. Chuck Todd, F. Chuck, these senators are challenging the president, not on policy, but on demeanor. And that, folks, that's exactly right. That's exactly right when you strip it down here. And listen to what Todd said.
Do you believe this split is over style or is it over substance? You can make a case it's over both. There's definitely a pugilism that Trump's style of politics, which really perfected by Rush Limbaugh, Roger Ailes, that sort of in-your-face conservative populism that you could say Donald Trump is emblematic of. Is that what you view as the fight inside the Republican Party? Is this a stylistic fight? Is this truly over substance? But let me ask you this. If Donald Trump were more polite, would Jeff Flake still be running? And would Bob Corker still be running, even if he was still a protectionist, even if he was still an isolationist? I think for now, this split appears to be more about style and decorum and character.
Bingo! Let me tell you what that means. It's not really that they're upset. They don't like fighting back, folks. This nails it again. What makes them nervous is fighting back. And they're disguising that fear by saying they disagree with Trump's personality, or his pugnaciousness, or his tweeting, or his barbaric attitude, or his bull in the China shop demeanor, whatever. That's just code for they're uncomfortable fighting back. They're uncomfortable fighting back. Why? Well, they're afraid of what the media might say about them, number one. They're afraid of what their other sophisticated members of the establishment will say if they start echoing or agreeing with or sounding like Trump. Now, stop and think of what this means, though. Essentially, aside from a couple of outside the mainstream examples, most of these guys are pretty much on the same page with Trump, issue after issue after issue. I mean, immigration and healthcare might be two standouts. But they still can't find their way to openly supporting his agenda because they are made nervous by the way Trump behaves. It's just so unseemly, it's so unsophisticated, it's so crude. Ooh, it's just crude. We don't like that. So, in other words, they are from the patsy wing of the party, which wants to continue to be doormats and at peace. But note, ladies and gentlemen, who is it that in the eyes of F. Chuck Todd, and if it's in the eyes of F. Chuck Todd, it's in the eyes of everybody in the drive-by media, who is responsible for this? Why, yeah, none other than your beloved host, the all-knowing, all-caring, all-sensing, all-feeling, all-hearing, all-everything Maharishi. Yes, that's right. This style of politics perfected by Rush Limbaugh, Roger Ailes, the sort of in-your-face conservative populism that Trump is emblematic of. And that's another reason. Let me just put it this way. While the media admit knowing that, they resent it. And you know what? There's no way that a guy on the radio should have this kind of influence. It just shouldn't happen. A guy on the radio shouldn't have the influence to determine how the Republican Party succeeds. If Limbaugh would simply go away or shut up, because we got rid of Ailes, if Limbaugh just shut up and go away, then we could turn this whole party back into a bunch of flakes and corkers and so forth, except for Trump. So they're expressing their desires and their wishes and their frustrations and all this. But how about that? Strip all that away. And the drive-by media here really believes that the reason these guys don't help move the Trump agenda is simply based on the fact that they don't like the way Trump operates. So what is important to them? Why can't they get past that? Moving the agenda is the thing. Winning is the thing. Keeping the Democrats on defensive and in the minority is the thing. And to allow discomfort with Trump's personality to impede that, kind of odd. Well, it isn't if you understand it. It's mostly unfortunate. Let me take a break. We'll come back, and because that's a standalone piece. I don't want to transition from that back into the dossier. We'll do that when we get back. Hillary Clinton says the Republican Party is imploding. And she's saying this because of Jeff Flake, and she's saying it because of Corker, and she is saying it because of things related to that. She's so out of touch and doesn't know where to look to find out whether or not the Republican Party is imploding. And the only way the Republican Party could be imploding is if Trump voters were abandoning him, and that's not happening. Mrs. Clinton, what's really happening here is Trump is draining the swamp. Establishmentarians who are admitting and demonstrating that they don't have what it takes to fight people like you are leaving. That's not imploding. that is an opportunity for improvement. Hillary also said the Republican Party imploding frightens her. Why would it frighten her? I remember Hillary saying in a Democrat primary debate back in 2015, the Republican Party was one of the enemies she's most proud of. This is in a debate with Crazy Bernie. She was asked, which enemy are you most proud of? She said, well, in addition to the NRA, the health insurance companies, the drug companies, the Iranians, probably the Republicans. So why would what she should be happy the Republican Party is imploding if that's what she thinks is actually happening. She says, a lot of things I worry about. This is actually on my list of what I worry about. The Republican Party is imploding. It's becoming a far-right captive party to ideological, religious, and commercial interests. This from a woman who gave Russia 20% of our uranium supplies in order to get $145 million in donations to her family slush fund and $500,000 speaking fees to her husband. So keep worrying, Hillary. By the way, a Hollywood actress, we're speaking of Hillary, Hollywood actress has accused Harvey Weinstein of rape now. Natasha Malta has become the latest woman to publicly accuse Harvey Weinstein of rape. A press conference Wednesday in New York City beside her attorney Gloria Allred. The actress recounted an alleged incident shortly after the BAFTA Awards in 2008, in which Malta said that Weinstein burst into her London hotel room and proceeded to, this is what happens, you don't pre-read these things. Well, it's in the news, it's in the mainstream. He proceeded to masturbate in front of her before eventually allegedly raping her. That account sounds eerily familiar to Juanita Broderick's. And Hillary, try this story. This is from the AP today. Senators rally behind Trump and his agenda after mini revolt. There was no dam break of Republican rancor against Donald Trump a day after a pair of the party's prominent senators denounced Trump and invited colleagues to join them. Instead, most Republican lawmakers rallied around Trump and his agenda on Wednesday, with one all but saying good riddance to Jeff Flake and Bob Corker of Tennessee. Senator Inhofe, Oklahoma. Maybe we do better by having some of the people who just don't like him leave and replace them with somebody else. Our old buddy Chris Cillizza. We like Chris Cillizza. He is wrong so much, but he's innocently wrong. He tries hard. And he's been fair to me, which I can't say about very many of these people. And he has a piece. Jeff Flake just flew a kamikaze mission against Donald Trump. Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake announced Tuesday he won't run for a second term in the Senate, but he made the decision months ago when he decided to go public with his indictment of both Trump and a Republican Party that had accepted such an interloper into its ranks. Chris, we want to help here. Jeff Flake didn't see this as a kamikaze mission. Jeff Flake thought that he was going to be reelected by acclamation. Chris Flake thought he was going to be heralded as a hero. He's so out of touch, it's a shame. On the cutting edge of societal evolution, Rush Limbaugh executing assigned host duties flawlessly. Zero mistakes. Assange, Trump-tied firm, sought WikiLeaks help before election. This is CNN doing everything they can to deflect. And Dan Pfeiffer on there today. We don't know if Trump colluded with Russia, but we now know they wanted to. Because somebody got hold of WikiLeaks representing Trump, supposedly, and asked to see some of the Hillary emails. So what? All that proves is there wasn't any collusion. But we don't even need that, folks. The idea that there was collusion is one of these giant hoaxes. Unfortunately, it's sort of baked into the culture now. It's been part of the news every day for a year. I mean, and not just part of the news, it has been the news for a year. So it's just baked in. And the whole thing is manufactured and made up. Now, let's tour some of the media to see how they're trying to defend what Hillary and the Democrat National Committee did. The first one is from Kenneth Vogel, one of the New York Times reporters, who said on Twitter they were lied to by Hillary's lawyer. This is Mark Elias. And he lied to them for more than a year. And Maggie Haberman, is it Maggie Haberman? Yeah, Maggie Haberman writes for the New York Times. She unloaded on this guy a couple days ago, and her story made it look like this is why they finally unloaded, because they got tired of being lied to. Mark Elias lied to the New York Times for over a year, but it doesn't seem to have fazed Kenneth Vogel, since he's doing everything he can in this article to spin things for Hillary. The piece is What to Know About the Dossier of Trump Research and Who Paid for It. Who paid for it? We already know that Clinton and the DNC paid for it, but now they're trying to bring in this rogue Republican. Trump says he knows who it is, and I think I know who it is. But there is a rogue Republican that also tried to pay for some of this stuff during the primary. So they're trying to link that to Hillary and the DNC contracting for this dossier. The Republican involved didn't have anything to do with its creation. Hillary and the Democrat National Committee, this is a work of art that they commissioned. It's a work of BS that they commissioned. So they end up asking at the New York Times, does it matter who paid for it? They say, it depends on your politics. So you see now, as the New York Times, after they unload on her, now they're trying to walk it back a little bit and spread this around to both parties. Does it matter who paid for the dossier? It's Slate.com. The reality is that the Russia investigation has progressed far beyond the dossier, and it's not altogether clear what role it played in informing the investigation anyway. Special counsel Robert Mueller is building a legal case against Trump and his associates, and the dossier is surely not a foundational part of that effort. Oh, but it is. It always has been. It was the starting point. Slate either is completely ignorant about this or is lying through their journalistic teeth. Do these people not remember Brennan? It was during a TV interview, and I forget what network, but I'm going to guess CNN, because I don't watch MSNBC ever at all. I can't tell you the last time I had that cable network on. I mean, it's been years. And the only time I watch CNN is here, when I have it on the top monitor here, but I never even listened to it. But I certainly remember seeing this. John Brennan, the CIA director, telling everybody in this interview that this dossier formed the basis. That's an exact quote. The basis for him beginning his investigation. It formed the basis. That's what's so tremendously wrong about this. It's a collection of lies that was written by commission. Somebody, Hillary, ordered this to be written. And the intelligence agencies in this country, run at the time by Obama people, used this dossier, which was fake and phony, but they treated it like legitimate intelligence. This is the genuine outrage over this. This is the real outrage over it. I mean, the fact that somebody would tell lies about a candidate, that's not news. That's not earth-shaking. That's not unprecedented. But this is. To pay $9 million to have an elaborate hoax written and created to have it make it look like it is the result of deep intelligence gathering, and then it is presented to the CIA and the FBI and to John McCain, and those elements treat it as serious intelligence and begin a full-fledged investigation, which in the process ruins several people and comes close to ruining others. All the while, it is nothing more than a 100% hoax. This ought to have people outraged in ways they haven't been, even in Washington, for years. Which takes us to Devin Nunes. Devin Nunes was on Tucker Carlson last night on the Fox News channel. And Carlson said, on what grounds could the Democrats say we don't have a right to know who they could have paid and hired for this dossier?
When you plead the fifth and then you go to court to try to block us from getting the information, and then it gets leaked to the Washington Post that the DNC and the Hillary campaign paid for this, I think we have a problem. Now I think the next focus is going to be on whether or not did the FBI use this dossier to get any warrants? Did they use it to open up a counterintelligence investigation? And if they did, if they're using unverified information to open up inquiries into American citizens, I think we have a big problem.
A huge problem. A big problem. This is no different than a presidential candidate being able to make up anything she wants about a candidate and then take whatever she makes up to the director of the CIA and have him begin a thorough investigation of the claims, totally made up, that goes on and on and on for a year, that then features anonymous sources leaking drivel to the drive-by media. That's essentially what happened here. A presidential candidate, I don't care if it was her surrogates, I don't care if she did or didn't know, I don't believe she didn't know. This is the kind of thing the Clintons do. This is the kind of thing the Clintons are proud of. This is exactly the kind of work product you would get out of the Clinton war room. So they make up, not just anything, they make up after the election, well, they added to it after the election, they make up the fact that the Trump campaign is colluding with Russia, not just to win the election, but they are colluding to do great damage to the American democratic process. Think about all the allegations that have been made here. And Hillary Clinton and her campaign were simply allowed to farm out making up everything that was in this so-called dossier. And then they were able to eventually get it to the CIA and the Director of National Intelligence, who treated it as real. Nunes is exactly right. And if this was used, unverified, made-up information to open up inquiries into American citizens, we have a huge problem. It meant that Hillary Clinton and her campaign were willing to destroy whoever necessary in order to pull this off, to make people think that Trump actually had colluded, that Trump actually was a traitor, that Trump was actually seeking to undermine the United States of America and its democratic electoral process. The CIA has obviously been corrupted. If the director doesn't demand evidence, if the director says, oh man, what an opportunity we've gotten, if he starts running with it as though he's nothing more than a political hack, which he is, and James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, and whoever else they brought in on this. More Nunes. Well, no, I want to reiterate what he said. The next bite is not Nunes. I thought it was. He continues to point out here that the use of this information to open up a counterintelligence investigation, meaning start digging into their own intelligence investigation. Look at what, if they got FISA warrants, look what using this document allowed them to do. Pry open the deepest parts of citizens' private lives, all for the purpose of getting rid of the duly elected president. Now, Clapper is next. He was on CNN today with Allison Camerata. She said, Devin Nunes wants to know if the dossier triggered an investigation. What is the answer to that?
I think the counterintelligence investigation was launched before the revelation of the dossier.
Okay.
The dossier would be a part of this counterintelligence investigation that was already underway, which, of course, was buttressed by our intelligence community assessment in the first place. And that was a challenge for us, I suppose, at the end. We just ran out of time as to whether or not the allegations, particularly the salacious ones, could be rebutted or confirmed.
They're in total cover-up mode now, folks. Clapper's trying to muddy the water here, saying, well, we used the dossier to spy on Trump, and they've been caught. That's what he's trying to say here. But let's parse this. I think the counterintelligence investigation was launched before the revelation of the dossier. The dossier, that's going to be tough. That dossier was floating around Washington all summer last year. That dossier was being used before it was officially being used. If you get my drift, it was making the rounds. It was a political ploy. These people are political hacks. That's what's wrong here. They're all Obama political hacks. And they were all in on the effort to use this and try to create the notion that it was deeply mined, legitimate intelligence that mandated these investigations. Why? For the protection of our beloved democracy, which they were trying to undermine. The dossier was part of the counterintelligence investigation already underway, buttressed by our intelligence community assessment in the first place. It was all wet. There isn't any evidence. You don't have anything, is the point here. I have to take a break. I'm a little long, but we are coming right back. What do you mean, did I see the news about Mark Halpern's sexual harassment? Of course I saw that. I don't like we're going to learn anything about it, and he's saving it all for his book. Isn't that what he does? Well, he writes all these books about presidential campaigns and doesn't tell us anything about it till after it's all over, and the details that really matter in the book. So, yeah, well, we'll get to that. Here's more of Clapper. Ladies and gentlemen, last night CNN, Aaron Burnett out front, question. He just now refers to it as a fake dossier, talking about Trump. But I want to make the point that some of it's been corroborated, but far from all of it. Do you would somebody tell me what has been corroborated in this dossier? What's been corroborated? That Trump was running for president? What's been corroborated? Some of it's been corroborated. Well, anyway, here's what Clapper said. If the question, do you think more or most of it is true?
I don't know that. When we did our intelligence
Stop the tape. You have had this thing for over a year. You don't know. You're the director of national intelligence. You don't know if it's true or not? This is political hackery. Resume tape.
I don't know that. When we did our intelligence community assessment, we were aware that there had been research done and that some Republican candidates, as a matter of fact, had contracted through, I think, Fusion GPS to obtain what later became what's known as the dossier.
So Clinton paid for part of it, but it had been started and paid for by Republicans.
Stop the tape! The Republicans didn't start diddly squat. So here's Erin. She's smarter than this. I'm telling you, everybody on the left has been corrupted beyond, I think, even their own awareness. She just said here, so Clinton paid for part of it, but it had been started and paid for by Republicans. The Republicans didn't start anything here. And here's Clapper saying, well, I don't know if it's true. I really don't. He's only the director of national intelligence. And they've only been trying to use. This is the point. None of it's true, but they've been using it as if it is. That is the point. And they will never admit that. So all of this is obfuscation, trying to cover up what these clowns have actually keep it running.
As I understand it, was handed off later to the DNC and the Clinton campaign. The key thing is, it doesn't matter who paid for it. Nothing was handed off to the Clinton campaign and DNC. They paid for it.
Now he's trying to make it look like the dossier was out there, and it kind of wrote itself, this intelligence guy, this Christopher Steele, and then he gave it to the Republicans because they had paid for it, and then eventually it made its way to the DNC. This, folks, I'm trying really hard to maintain my composure here. Richard Nixon could have practiced for 2 years and not been able to slither through this like Clapper's doing. Keep it rolling.
The substantive content, not all of it, but some of the substantive content of the dossier, we were able to corroborate in our intelligence community assessment, which from other sources in which we had a very high confidence level.
So when the president just refers to it as fake dossier, that is false?
I don't think that is the accurate characterization for the entirety of the dossier.
I don't think that's it is fake. It was made up. What corroboration? And then he ultimately says here, because I think he knows he's really skating on thin ice, the key thing is it doesn't matter who paid for it. It most certainly does. Because it's a crime. It most certainly does matter who paid for it. That is salient. Some of the substantive content of the dossier we were able to corroborate in our intelligence community assessment, which from other sources in which we had very... What an absolute crock. But this is what they're doing to try to cover it up. This is what they're doing. Now, they're not protecting Hillary. They're protecting themselves. These are supposedly independent-minded intelligence professionals working to save the country from attacks, not advance the Obama agenda. What a laugh that is. So you probably wouldn't be surprised to see that CNN had a panel last night blaming both sides for funding the dossier. You just heard Clapper and Aaron Burnett. That was embarrassingly wrong. That was just embarrassingly so uninformed. All of this, they're making fools of themselves. Senator John McCain will not say whether he knew he was handing a Clinton-funded Russia dossier to the FBI. So McCain's trying to say, I didn't know who paid for it. I thought it was real. Because Trump's a reprobate. Everybody knows it. Urinating on beds? Yeah, I can buy it. So yeah, I passed it on. Greetings, my friend. Welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Your phone calls are coming up. I'm greatly appreciative of all of you who try to call each day, and those of you who get through and stay on hold. We'll get to you El Quico. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Just a little more on this. I could spend the whole show on this. I'm so outraged by it. I could spend the whole show and not be very repetitive. But I'm not going to do that because there's all kinds of stuff in the unrelated stack. There's all kinds of stuff out there not even related to this. Senator John McCain may find himself facing serious questions following the disclosure that Hillary Clinton and the Democrat National Committee paid for the famous 35-page dossier on President Trump. In December, it was McCain who notoriously passed the dossier produced by Fusion GPS to James Comey. McCain heard about it, and he's got an unrelenting hatred, a personal hatred for Trump. So he heard about this. You know the story. He was so excited to get it. He sent somebody overseas. He dispatched somebody on an airline, go over there and get this damn thing and bring it back to me. And he did, and he gave it to Comey. But it was already widely known by everybody involved. Now, the question is that he's being asked, did you know that this was effectively made up and paid for by Hillary Clinton? And McCain will not say. In fact, last week, McCain denied providing the dossier to BuzzFeed, said he only gave it to the FBI. I gave it to no one except to the director of the FBI. I don't know why you're digging this up now, McCain told a Daily Caller. I hope he's asked about this every day. Ipolvy's asked, what did you know and when did you know it? He denied being the guy that gave it to BuzzFeed. The Clinton campaign got this thing to everybody floating all over Washington. All the news agencies had it. Why is everybody trying to act now like they didn't know it was there? It was everywhere. I have described for you. In fact, one of my theories has been echoed or validated by Molly Hemingway at the Federalist yesterday. She did a whole timeline on how the fact that it was shown to Trump is what literally made it news and allowed all the news agencies to report it. And that was courtesy of Mr. Comey. I've made this point on prior occasions. She puts it on paper at the Federalist and walks through a timeline for this. But essentially, the drive-bys know it's out there. They're salivating to use it, but there's nothing in it that's true. But that's not what's stopping them. They're going to use it. They're just waiting for something to trigger that makes it newsworthy to cover it. They can't cover the specifics because nobody really believes it. But the ones, the drive-bys who saw, knew how damaging they could all make it if it could just get out there. That's why BuzzFeed decided to take the header for everybody and publish the thing. BuzzFeed took the arrow. I am convinced that BuzzFeed was assured, and I don't mean maybe directly by voice or phone message or instant message, but I'm sure the people at BuzzFeed were told, don't worry, we'll cover for you. We will not write how irresponsible you've been. We'll cover for you on the journalism side. And so BuzzFeed went into gear. And after months and months of this thing floating around, BuzzFeed published it. This is long after Comey's had it. Long after McCain gave it to Comey. Long after it has shown up with John Brennan. It's already being used. Probably to secure FISA warrants. Probably to gin up phony investigations of completely innocent people in furtherance of this objective to get rid of Trump. They all know what's in it, and it's like the Access Hollywood video. They want it out there. They think it will destroy Trump. The golden showers part, if they could just get it out there that he hired some prostitutes to urinate on Obama's bed in Moscow. The golden showers aspect. But nobody will touch it because none of it's been corroborated. BuzzFeed took the plunge. They published the whole thing on their website with caveats galore. None of this has been verified. None of this has been confirmed. We're working diligently to try to confirm it. So far we can't, but it's so important. We think you have a right to know it's out there. And bang, there it is. That made it news, and then Comey showing it to Trump. That triggered it being covered. And that's how you and I, me, everybody learned about it. The whole thing's a scam. And everybody on the left is in on this. And now it's laughable today to listen to Clapper and Aaron Burnett try to say the Republicans started this. The Republicans paid for it and handed it off to Fusion GPS and the Democrats. And Devin Nunes is now adamant that he's going to find out if this thing has been used to secure FISA warrants or otherwise begin counterintelligence investigations of otherwise innocent Americans. From thehill.com, Clinton didn't know about Trump dossier until publication. You know, it's amazing. The smartest woman in the world is so damn ignorant of everything going on around her. She's ignorant that her husband's out there raping Juanita Broaddrick. She's ignorant of the fact that her husband is having an affair with Jennifer Flowers and who knows who else. She's ignorant of the intern being traipsing around the White House in the Oval Office, Monica Lewinsky's ignorant of this. She was ignorant of all the women, even though she headed up the bimbo eruptions unit. Smartest woman in the world, ignorant of everything around her. She didn't know about the cattle futures deal. She didn't know about Whitewater. She didn't know about Travelgate. She didn't know about her server. She didn't know about her emails on the server. She didn't know anything her husband was doing. She didn't know anything about Benghazi. She didn't know anything about the Russians. She doesn't know anything about the dossier. And yet she's the most qualified woman. What did Obama say? Sorry, Bill, may have to say this. The Democrat convention. Sorry, Bill, but she's maybe the most qualified person to ever run. And that includes you and me, Bill. Remember that? I about choked on my ramen when I heard that. I'm laughing myself silly watching this stuff. As they're trying to build up the image and reputation of basically an empty pantsuit here. And now she's out there saying she didn't know about the Trump dossier until it was published. That simply isn't true. One other little delectable piece of news before we head back to the audio sound bites. There is a whole controversy about money and how it was spent and where it went. There's an FEC complaint stating that the Clinton campaign and the DNC broke federal law over the Trump dossier. A website called Law News cites campaign legal experts as saying it's illegal for a campaign to pay a law firm who then hires another firm to perform campaign-related activities without reporting the purpose of the expenditures. And this is related to this Mark Elias, who lied to the New York Times and Washington Post for a year. Mark Elias hired Fusion GPS to conduct research on Trump. Fusion GPS then hired Christopher Steele. Now, the reason that the Clinton camp hires a law firm here is to give them attorney-client privilege. You hire the law firm to hire sleazeballs. And that's how you protect yourself from ever being tagged as funding the activity of the sleazeballs. And this is what the Federal Election Commission is going to try to unravel. Now, there's another law firm involved with this, though. And that firm goes by the name of Perkins Coie. This is the law firm that was used as a cutout to get the Steele dossier about Trump written. We've heard about Christopher Steele, and we've heard about Mark Elias, and we've heard about the dossier. But the law firm that was hired to provide the attorney-client privilege shield is Perkins Coie. And there's an interesting person that works at this firm. His name is Bob Bauer. Bob Bauer, not to be confused with Matt Lauer. This is Bob Bauer. He is the lawyer who runs the Washington office of Perkins Coie. This is the firm that was used as the cutout to get the Steele dossier about Trump written. Bob Bauer used to be the White House counsel under Obama. Bob Bauer was counsel, i.e. lawyer, to Obama's presidential campaign. Bob Bauer has been the general counsel for the Democrat National Committee, the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee, and the Democrat Senatorial Campaign Committee, sometimes all at the same time. Bob Bauer was the guy who wrote a lot of the ethics complaints filed against Newt Gingrich when he was Speaker of the House. This is the guy who was the law firm cutout or go-between to get the Steele dossier about Trump written. This is the guy that passed the money from the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign on to Steele and to Fusion GPS. This firm was not picked by accident or happenstance. This firm is a political hack firm with direct ties to Obama and the Democrat apparatus. The idea that this is legitimate intel or that the Republicans had anything to do with this, as CNN is trying to pass off along with James Clapper. And now Hillary saying, well, I didn't know. I didn't know until the dossier was, I didn't have any idea. Meanwhile, while the drive-bys have devoted 20 seconds to this yesterday and last night, Drudge had a flashback on his page about how the media nearly went hysterical over Donald Trump Jr.'s willingness to accept Russian dirt on Hillary. Remember that now vaunted meeting, which turns out to have been nothing more than a Russian agent trying to influence legislation on adoption. There wasn't any dirt passed on Hillary. That was a tempting way the meeting was set up. And, of course, Donald Trump Jr., well, I'll be happy to listen to that. The media went nuts. They went hysterical, trying to prove Donald Trump Jr. was colluding, and this proves his dad was colluding, and nothing ever came of that. But they're ignoring all of this because everywhere you look on this Trump dossier, you see thousands of Democrat fingerprints. From the Obama administration to the CIA to the FBI to the Director of National Intelligence to the law firm that was hired as the cutout. This is a full-fledged 1,000% Democrat Party operation. This is community organizing on parade. The difference here is that the lies that were made up and published then became passed off as legitimate intelligence, as far as the American people were concerned. Legitimate intelligence that they've been for a year trying to convince everybody that Donald Trump is illegitimately elected, that he cheated, that he undermined the American Democrat process, that he colluded with those sleazebag Russians to undermine the duly deserving Hillary Rodham Clinton. When in fact the undermining and the corrupting and the dirt and the sleaze is all originating and contained within the boundaries of the Democrat Party and their willing accomplices in the drive-by media. Talent on loan from God. All right, let me get started on the phones. This is Conrad in Hooker, Oklahoma. Great to have you, Conrad. What's happening? What do you do in Hooker, Oklahoma?
I have my own business doing construction and remodeling.
Thank you, sir. Are you busy?
I am busy. I'm swamped. We had a big hailstorm here. And remember, Hooker, it's a location, not a vocation.
Is that on the population sign as you drive into town?
It should be.
Anyway,
I want to thanks for having me on. I've listened to you since the 80s with my grandfather smoking cigars in his shop.
Oh, wow, that's great. I have a cigar going right now.
So I was wanting to ask, how long do you think the Democratic Party and the media can hang on to Hillary before they have to sweep her under the rug and make her disappear because it harms their election?
Or will they? Well, that's it. Yesterday, I was fully convinced that this whole thing, the reporting that she and her campaign and the DNC had paid for this dossier, I thought that was step one in getting rid of her. I thought that was the media and the party apparatus deciding that she's overstayed her welcome. She won't go away. She's not the face they want of the party or anything else. And couple that with Weinstein. Weinstein's inseparable from the Clintons. I mean, Harvey Weinstein was a bundler, fundraiser. He was a fellow traveler with them. You look where these guys, look at the people they ran around with and hung around with. And to think that Clinton had it just stretches the credulity here. And so I thought this very story was aimed at being the shove or the push to get her under the bus. But now last night, the way they're circling the wagons here in the drive-by media, I'm beginning to wonder because I hear conflicting reports. I don't think there's any doubt that a lot of Democrats want her gone. They gave her shots. They gave her chances to win the White House. She failed. Embarrassingly, how do you lose to Donald Trump? But she did. It's one thing to lose to the young, cool, hip black guy, but to lose to the ogre of the NBC Access Hollywood Video, they can't believe that happened. In fact, you know what? I'll tell you something here, Conrad. I saw Hillary tweeted herself. This is, I think, her birthday or close to it, October 26th. She tweeted herself a birthday greeting last year that had a picture of her dressed like she was a Quaker and 5 or 6, maybe 7 years old. And it says, happy birthday to a woman who will be president. That was a year ago. So a year ago, you know that they were all thinking this was done. It was the election was a formality. She was the next president. 97% chance, said Nate Silver. Folks, imagine you expect the sun to come up every morning, and one day it doesn't. That's the panic they're in, and they haven't gotten over it. And they don't want her being the face of the party. That's what my theory was yesterday. Today, I don't know. Back we are. Rush Limbaugh, half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Sticking with the phones, Jay in Columbia, South Carolina. Welcome, sir. Glad you waited.
Hey, Rush.
Hey.
I'm a little upset with you today.
Why? What did I'm trying to think, what did I do?
This Uranium One deal makes Watergate look like a parking violation. And by you saying that Hillary won't go to jail over the biggest national security scandal in U.S. history only serves to give her cover. The Democrats and the rhinos are going to say, whoa, thank God for Limbaugh. He just gave us an out.
You know, I hadn't looked at it that way.
Well, listen, man, you don't know how big your influence is.
No,
by you saying that she won't go to jail, they're going to be going, thank God we're in the clear now. We can save her from the clink.
Jay, I want to be honest with you about something, and I can tell you're not going to believe it, but I don't think that way. I honestly have I don't have a consciousness of power or influence. I really don't. I'm totally taken aback here by your take that my simply offering the opinion that I can't imagine the swamp would ever put her in jail as giving her cover. I hope.
Well, let me tell you my perspective here. You need to be demanding that she does go to jail instead of throwing a wet towel on it. You know whatever you say carries a lot of weight. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't help for you to say it. You know what I'm saying? You have a lot of influence, my man.
Well, no, I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it. Don't misunderstand. I'm having this would never occur to me if you hadn't said this. That by saying I don't see how they're ever going to put her in jail, would actually give them cover not to. You may have a point.
Let me give you the Russian connection.
Well,
this is it, and this is not hyperbole to say this. Hillary, the Democrats, the media, and Putin are all communists. That's your Russian connection right there. And I hope that FBI informant has a security detail and a poison checker because the Clintons don't play nice.
Well, that guy has been released from his NDA, and he's going to testify.
That's what I'm saying, and they know that, so he better watch his back. Because the Clintons don't play nice, my man.
You're thinking this guy might not even make the hearing room.
What do you think? I'm saying...
Well, now that I did think. That you and I are on the same page on that. And when I saw that... But see, here's a good example. If I start talking about that, then with all of this influence I have, what if it comes back to me and says, I put the idea into somebody's head?
I don't think you're the only person, or I'm the only person that's had that thought. Given their past history record, I don't think we're the only ones that had that thought.
So let's get back to Hillary in jail for a minute. You think the Uranium One story is the story that ought to get her convicted with jail time?
Man, this is the biggest national security scandal in U.S. history.
Where do you put this dossier in that mix? Does that not interest you as much as the uranium scandal does? No wrong answer. I'm not. There's no. Don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to trick you up, but I'm just trying to find out what you think.
The dossier is criminal. The dossier is a felony. They're paying a foreign entity to come up with this. That you can't do that for in an election. That's a felony right there. I mean, we've got 13 felony cases that could be brought up against Hillary Clinton right now.
Going back to the server?
Oh, yeah.
The illegal server and all these other things that she's... I agree with you.
Let me tell you something. Comey and Mueller and Rosenstein, these guys are in deep in all of this. They are all culpable of all this. They knew this stuff way back when.
What do you think, then? I had a theory, this is Thursday, I thought on Monday or Tuesday, when I saw a little tidbit of news that said the Mueller investigation is not interested in Manafort because of his ties to Trump, but rather Manafort's ties to Tony Podesta, who is a Democrat operative, a longstanding brother of the skeletal and emaciated John Podesta, who's a Clinton chief of staff and so forth. And I began to wonder, what if this whole Mueller investigation, special counsel, is actually there to prevent the discovery of the things you're talking about? Trump wins. Nobody thought that was going to happen. There's no way under the sun. And Obama and Hillary and the Democrats had engaged in all, like the Uranium One scandal you're talking about. And now Trump runs the DOJ. Trump staffs the DOJ. Trump is in charge of any investigation the DOJ does or wants to do. And what if these guys circle the wagons? You know what? We've got to find a way to erase this so it can't be found. What do you think that's what's really going on with this?
That's why Trump needs to get Mueller out of there. This whole investigation with Trump and Russia was predicated on a lie, on this dossier.
And its purpose was to get rid of Trump.
Say again?
Its purpose was to get rid of Trump. It had an objective to either get him out of office or keep him from being elected.
Right.
And so now, turning this around, he's in charge of things now. And I do think the dossier story does give Trump even more cover if he wants to fire Mueller.
He needs to fire him today. I'm surprised he hasn't already done it. But I don't know what the heck Jeff Sessions is doing. He must be playing shuffleboard by himself behind the Capitol building.
Well, you are loaded. Sessions is pursuing MS-13, the criminal illegal immigrant gang out there, and he's made it abundantly clear that that's what he's doing. Let me ask you, since you are ready with opinions, let me ask you one more thing. That I have been somewhat surprised, and I will admit to being surprised, that the president has not made that much out of the dossier news. He addressed it a little bit in his impromptu meeting with the reporters yesterday before getting on the helicopter, and he called it a hoax, and he called it reverse this and reverse that. But he really hasn't tweeted about it much, he hasn't harped on it, and I'm kind of curious why he hasn't, because this was a guided missile aimed at his heart. This was a guided missile aimed at his life, his family's lives, and numbers of his associates. This was a flat-out manufactured lie designed to destroy him, ruin him, and other people.
Yeah, I agree that this is not typical of Trump. Usually he's out there on Twitter 24/7.
Yeah, there's got to be a reason. I wonder what the reason is.
Maybe they told him to just lay back, and now that this is starting to explode and implode, maybe he can just lay back a little bit and let this stuff take care of itself. Maybe there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Maybe he did light a candle under Jeff Sessions, and maybe he is starting.
Well, there better be a lot going on beside. We run the apparatus. We run the intelligence committees in the House and Senate. The Democrats don't. We do. There better be a lot going on behind the scenes. Trump's got some great judicial appointees that some of them have been confirmed. There's no reason to act like the Democrats still run the show and can bottleneck all of these things. We run the DOJ. We should be able to run investigations into this stuff. This is one of the many reasons Trump has been elected, by the way, is to make sure that the legitimate tools of law enforcement are used against all of these people who've been abusing this system for who knows how long. The evidence keeps piling up. So, and I'm encouraged when I hear Devin Nunes, who really deserves a lot of credit on both the uranium and the dossier thing. Devin Nunes, remember, he made that trip up to the White House that he was castigated for. He found that intel that nobody had seen, they were trying to cover up. And then they started demanding that he recuse himself and all this stuff from certain aspects of the investigation, and he did, but not all. He is owed a debt, really, for sticking to this. But he runs that committee. And so there better be some things going on behind the scenes here that will result in action being taken. Because I will guarantee you, if the tables were reversed and this story was essentially the same, except the Republicans had done the paying. The Republicans had manufactured the lies. The Republicans had used whatever was created to run phony, false intelligence investigations, criminal investigations of Democrats. You know, there would already been a perp walk in handcuffs. Somebody would already be in jail, and the media wouldn't let go of it till more were in jail. Right now, I just hope, and I look at people like Flake, and I look at people like Corker, and all of these holier-than-thou, I can't any longer stand up for this party. I can no longer stand aside and stay silent. And their only problem is they don't like Trump's personality. Well, what that means, they don't like pushback. They don't like getting in it. They don't like the down and dirty. They're content to be pacifists and take whatever happens as a result of their passivity. This is we're going to require much, much more than that. But I'm just afraid there are a whole lot of people afraid to take this on. Trump's not got he doesn't have a lot of support when it comes to this pushback. You look at Flake. I've got this story. Thanks very much for the call, Jay. I appreciate it. This Chris Cillizza story. I'm just going to reference this one more time. I referenced it earlier, and I had to speed it up to get finished with it during a break. Jeff Flake just flew a kamikaze mission at Donald Trump. Now, this Chris Cillizza, as I say, we like Cillizza. He's a nice guy. He doesn't know anything other than what the drive-bys say. Everything else is like foreign language, foreign country. So in his world, Jeff Flake standing up and taking on Donald Trump, knowing full well that his political career will end, is an act of bravery and courage unparalleled. And it wasn't a kamikaze mission, Chris. Jeff Flake had already done the kamikaze long before he stood up for that speech. Jeff Flake didn't even see this as a kamikaze mission. You know what Jeff Flake was doing, Chris? Let me tell you what he thought he was doing. Jeff Flake, by standing up and making that speech and saying all these anti-Trump things beforehand, Jeff Flake was misreading America and the Republican Party just like you guys do. Jeff Flake thought he was going to be treated as a hero. Jeff Flake thought he was going to become a national figure and national hero because he was willing to stand up and say what needed to be said in order to save this country from this reprobate pig, Donald Trump. He thought, Chris, that he was going to become, for lack of a better term, a big star. He thought he was going to gain national acclaim and be the toast of Washington when the truth is he's not even polling 18% in his reelection campaign, and he is an incumbent in Arizona. His big effort at becoming a national star, deeply courageous and brave for daring to take on the tyrant Trump, has blown up in his face. So Liza writes about it as Jeff Flake falling on his sword for the good of us all. What crap! That's what you all want to see this as, and that's maybe what Flake thought he was doing. He was going to get great. He was going to be a martyr. He was going to give up his career to save America. And instead, what happens? He can't even get 18% as an incumbent in his reelection bid in Arizona. He didn't take out the president. He's not going to ever come close to taking out the president. He rolled the dice, and he lost big. He did not do a kamikaze mission by making that speech. The kamikaze mission occurred long before that, when he made a misjudgment call on where his own voters were regarding his position and his work. Back in a moment. You know, I don't watch local news. Nothing wrong with it. I just don't watch it. I haven't watched local news. I had no idea a cold front was coming through here yesterday. And I took the dogs out last night about midnight. Whoa, what the hell is this? So I looked at my watch. I said, it's what? It was like 63 degrees. 58 degrees over. It doesn't get this chilly this early here. This is unusual. It's not going to last for much longer. It's kind of nice, actually. But, I mean, it totally took me by surprise. Did you know there was a cold front coming? Snurdly didn't either. Look, let me cut to the chase on this dossier business, folks. You know me. I love to make complex understandable. Let me tell you what this is. When you strip all of these distractions away, the fake dossier was nothing more than an all-out effort on the part of everybody inside the Beltway, the establishment, to get rid of this threat, this outsider threat posed by Trump. It wasn't just the Democrats. It wasn't just Hillary. It was the CIA. It was the FBI. It was Republicans like McCain. It was the establishment, and they're all linked in this. Now, I'm not saying they're trying to exonerate Hillary. She bought it, paid for it. But the fact is the CIA is involved in this, and Obama's involved in this, and the FBI is involved in this, because I'll tell you one other thing. I think we've seen references to this. I think in the bowels of the Democrat Party and the establishment, they knew Hillary Clinton was a horrible candidate. And I think a lot of them were worried that she couldn't win. Precisely because she was a lousy candidate who couldn't tell anybody why she wanted to win. She couldn't articulate an agenda, not honestly. And so this dossier was a combined effort by everybody of power in the establishment to make sure that this outsider didn't win. And it's blown up in their faces. And now they're running around like rats, trying to flee the scene of the crime. By the way, the news of the dossier, the timing of this, might be to help get the uranium story off of the position it holds above the fold. So, of course, none of that works here, but that could be what they're trying. We have one big broadcast hour left, and it's coming right up. Right on, meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day, Rush Limbaugh, and the fastest 3 hours in media here on the eponymous Rush Limbaugh program and the EIB network, 800-282-2882, if you want to be on the program. There is a story here from our old buddy Ben Shapiro, his website, The Daily Wire. Headline, Trump promised to cut job-killing regulations, and so far he's outpacing Reagan. The story actually written by James Barrett. On the campaign trail, Donald Trump made a lot of promises, and while some of them, like the big, beautiful wall, have thus far proven elusive, he has managed to keep several promises that aren't getting much airtime in the unprecedentedly negative coverage he gets. One thing he's doing amazingly well at following through on is his promise to get the government out of the way of business. In fact, Trump is doing it better than any president going back Jimmy Carter, and yes, that includes Ronaldus Magnus. Peter Boyer. We know Peter Boyer. Peter Boyer did a profile of me back when Vanity Fair was worth reading. No. That's Steve Roberts. Steve Roberts is the husband of Cokie Roberts of ABC News. No, Peter Boyer is he was a writer for Vanity Fair, and they assigned him to do a profile of me. And he said, when this is over, you're going to start getting invitations to parties at the Hamptons. I said, no way. I don't care what you write. It isn't ever going to happen. He said, you watch. And I think I got 2. Anyway, he's a good writer. I've always enjoyed reading everything Boyer does. He's at the Weekly Standard now. I guess everybody has to work somewhere. And I'm just kidding. In fact, one of my all-time favorite weekly columns is published now, the Weekly Standard, Tuesday Morning Quarterback by Greg Easterbrook. Anyway, Peter Boyer provides an analysis of just how well Trump is doing on slashing job-killing red tape all across the economy, as Trump put it in a speech a few weeks ago. We have stopped or eliminated more regulations in the last 8 months than any president has done during an entire term. It's kind of like Rush Limbaugh, who says more in one show than most guys say in a year. That's how I'm cutting regulations. It's not even close, Trump said. Well, you want some evidence of this? I have here, and I have a former Time, the latest Time magazine cover. And I want to show those of you watching on the Ditto Cam the latest Time magazine cover. If you could switch to that, Brian, there it is. It is a series of 3 wrecking balls, and each wrecking ball is the face of Donald Trump with the orange hair. Well, actually, the yellow hair and the orange face. And the headline is The Wrecking Crew, and the subhead, How Trump's Cabinet is Dismantling Government as We Know It. And that's the latest cover. If you're watching on the Ditto Cam, that is it. Thereby saving you the trouble of buying the magazine or looking it up on your own. But if Time magazine, this is obviously very alarming to them. To make a cover story out of this, The Wrecking Crew, Trump's Cabinet Dismantling Government as We Know It. And I think there are so many things happening in the Trump administration that aren't being covered. I find it's a little curious that the media isn't focusing on this from this point of view. The media loves government. Of course, the establishment loves government. The government is the citadel around which all of them work and are organized. And so government is innately good, and it must constantly grow. There must never be any limits on it. And Trump is wreaking havoc all through the government. Judicial nominations, economic policy, executive orders, the regulations that he has canceled and prevented from being implemented just at the EPA alone have the left nearly bat crazy. And you would think that the drive-bys would be writing about this because in their world, everybody loves government. And I would think that they would think they could score major points against Trump if they would run around and just tell everybody what a what a dangerous force he is. And I think that's what Time Magazine's doing here with this cover. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see even more of it. Do you remember, this wasn't that long ago, but so much has happened since, it may have slipped your mind. You remember that Trump signed an executive order that eliminated subsidies for Obamacare. The subsidies were to the insurance companies that permitted them to charge lower premiums that the poor and the mid-level poor could afford, because Obamacare in its natural state is unaffordable. Obamacare as designed is unaffordable. You need to be subsidized if you are, quote-unquote, middle-class, average American. You can't afford it on your own. You can't afford the premiums. You can't afford the deductibles. Well, those premiums were never the subsidies were never constitutional because they came about by way of a presidential executive order. And the Constitution is very clear that all appropriations or all expenditures of money must originate legislatively in the House of Representatives. And these subsidies had not. And they have been part of Obamacare from the get-go, and thus they have been unconstitutional and illegal from the get-go. Trump was always trying in his push to repeal Obamacare to have policy, legislation deal with these subsidies. But we all know that the efforts to get a repeal bill failed to come to fruition. So Trump just decided, you know what, I'm just going to do an executive order that eliminates subsidies. And right on cue, the media and the Democrat Party and the civil rights left had a cow. You can't do this. You can't take money away from the poor. This is inhumane. This is unconscionable. This is racist. It's, the usual cliches that they offered. And so a bunch of leftists said, we're going to go to court. We're going to go to court. We're going to get those subsidies reinstituted. You can't just write them out, even though they were illegal. Well, here we have from a despondent Associated Press, states lose the push to force Trump to restart health subsidies. A U.S. judge yesterday rejected a request from 18 states and the District of Columbia to force the Trump administration to resume paying Obamacare subsidies right now. The judge scolded the coalition of states for claiming health care costs would rise without federal help. Paying the subsidies causes everything to rise, is what the judge... What do you mean? By eliminating the subsidies, costs increase. I distinctly remember when these states came together to form this coalition and when the civil rights left got its act in gear. I remember the media telling us that Trump was going to lose this, that he was going to embarrassingly lose this like he's been losing his travel bans, that it would be a slam dunk, that there's no judge in America that would allow money to be taken out of the hands of the poor and the thirsty and the hungry like this. State attorneys general led by California Democrat Xavier Becerra, or Javier Becerra, take your pronunciation pick, argued that the monthly payments are required under Obamacare and cutting them will harm consumers. The judge, Vince Chabria, an Obama appointee, too, said the states had devised workarounds to the lost subsidies that would give millions of lower-income people even better options. You don't need the subsidies. You guys are doing it on your own. Why? Judge essentially said, if you're going to give away money, why should the feds also give away money? Now, note that the AP points out the judge is an Obama appointee. They never do that, especially when a judge rules in the media's favor. This is meant to shame him by calling Judge Chabria, or Chabria, by calling, for all I know, it's pronounced Chabria. It's C-H-A, I'm sorry, two H's, C-H-H-A-B-R-I-A. When I've never heard a name pronounced, I pronounce it according to the way I learned words are pronounced when I took English. And this would be pronounced Chabria or Chabria. But I don't know what ethnicity it is. For example, in Spanish, how do you think you pronounce the name Olazabel? How do you pronounce that? Give me a shot at it. Olazabel. Olazabel. The Z in Spanish is a th. Olazabel. When I first heard that on a golf tournament, he was a professional golfer. When I heard, did they hire somebody that can't speak and put him in the booth here? What is Olazabel? And then I learned that the correct pronunciation in Spanish, and he is Spanish. He's from Spain. It's a TA. So I don't know here if this is Abria or Abria or Habria. I don't know. So I'm just pronouncing. So I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I'm just telling you. He's an Obama-appointed judge, and the AP points this out. They're shaming the guy for not voting the way the president who appointed him would want him to vote in this. And this, from the AP, premiums rising 34% for most popular health plan. Premiums for the most popular Obamacare plans are going up an average of 34%, according to a study yesterday that confirms dire predictions about the impact of political turmoil on consumers. The consulting firm involved here crunched newly released government data and found that the Trump administration's actions are contributing to the price increases by adding instability. These are scheduled price increases that are written into the law, and all of a sudden it's all Trump's fault because he's brought instability to the mix. Classic. 5 women have accused the journalist and political director for numerous TV networks, Mark Halperin, of sexual harassment. He's also the author of a book called Game Change. Halperin and his buddy is a buddy named John Heilemann. And what they have perfected a formula. They assign themselves the Democrat campaign for president every 4 years, and they cover that campaign every day. But they don't report on that campaign every day. They save most of it for a book that they publish after the election. And much of what they uncover would have been damaging to the Democrat, and they withhold it. And now it's become a formula that other journalists have copied and used. Anyway, Halperin has been the political director at ABC News. He was a commentator at NBC and also on PMS NBC. And he has been dismissed on the basis of these allegations. Some of the allegations are that he would rub up against women while at ABC with a, let's just say he was aroused, and he would rub up against them and make contact with the upper torso against their will. I'm trying to keep this family oriented. Snerdley is frowning. What do you mean upper torso? Believe me, the little boys know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to protect the moms here from not knowing what their boys already do. Veteran journalist Mark Halperin sexually harassed women while he was in a powerful... Have you noticed, folks? All of these Democrats that do this? Oh, I know. There's, you got a couple of shining examples on the right. But for crying out loud, look at all of the sexual harassment going on in Hollywood. There's not a conservative among them. You talk about hypocrisy. These are the people that preach to everybody about proper treatment and respect for women while casting them as sluts and whores and other things. I mean, they preach to everybody. They say they're great feminists and they're pro-abortion and they're big-time supporters of Planned Parenthood. Now, look at this. Look at the way they treat women. Look at the way they see women. Seems like every day a new round of Democrat-leaning people are outed. led by Harvey Weinstein. But I mean, to me, that is one of the most noteworthy things about it. Because these are the people that preach. These are the people that talk about how holier than thou they are. They are journalists, and they comment on everybody else's moral failings as though they have never had any. Anyway, MSNBC, where Halperin makes frequent appearances on Morning Joe, said early today, MSNBC said he would leave his roles at that network and as an analyst at NBC News. We find the story of the allegation is very troubling, MSNBC said in a statement. Mark Halperin is leaving his role as a contributor until the questions around his past conduct are fully understood. And Halperin went on to, he apologized, but I didn't print the second page didn't print. That's what it is. But the wording of his apology was interesting. I'll find it. I have to take a break. NFL's TV numbers. Folks, it's worse than anybody knew when you compare to 2015. It's down like 18%, almost 19% since 2015. League-wide. One thing I remember of Mark Halperin was one of the biggest moral critics of Donald Trump, that Access Hollywood tape. He was just out there excoriating Trump for this kind of outrageously immature, boorish behavior. These guys have got to be careful. They've got you. When you start ragging on somebody like this and you've got this own stuff going on in your past, you've got to know. You have to plan on it coming out at some point. Let me get back to the phones in our time remaining in the segment. This is Carl in Leonia Valley, California. Hi.
Hey, good afternoon, Rush. I've got a question and thank you for letting me on the microphone with you. I've got a question and a comment. My question centers around a little bit of memory I had the other day. I was thinking about the Bill Clinton running for office back in the 90s, and I remember hearing a bunch of stuff about the Chinese campaign contributions that kept pouring in, all this money that was a little flaky, but it was all coming in to help him become president. And then probably 10 years later, I remember reading an article, or there was something on 60 Minutes, about vital national assets being sold to Chinese, the Americans' rare earth metals. And they made a big deal about it because you just can't find these things everywhere on the globe. And I was wondering if there was a pattern here.
Oh, you ever heard of Loral Space?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's our old buddy Bernie, what's his name? He's this Bernie Schwartz, the CEO of the place. Back at the day, this is during the Clinton administration, too, the Chicoms could not get their missiles into orbit. They had all kinds of problems with their gyroscopes and stethoscopes and all kinds of stuff. And Bernie Schwartz was allowed to sell China technology that would get their missiles into orbit after Clinton changed purview over this from the State Department to the Commerce Department. The first thing that had to happen was the Commerce Department had to be granted purview over the decision. It was run by Ron Brown at the time. And that's one instance of Clinton allowing a donor to profit by facilitating, military information, if you will, to China. The Chinese money, those were money orders, $250 money orders that came into Charlie Tree's barbecue restaurant in Little Rock. I'm not kidding. All right, back to Mark Halperin. Mark Halperin admitted to CNN that his appropriate was inappropriate. He denied the allegations that he had grabbed a woman's breasts without consent. And he denied that he had pressed his fully clothed, erect self against 3 of his co-workers. But he denied that, but he said, during this period, I did pursue relationships with women that I worked with, including some junior to me. I now understand from these accounts that my behavior was inappropriate and caused others pain. For that, I am deeply sorry and I apologize. Under the circumstances, I'm going to take a step back from my day-to-day work while I properly deal with this situation. Well, he knew last year enough to rip Trump to shreds over the Access Hollywood. But he only now realizes that his behavior was inappropriate. What was inappropriate about it if he was pursuing relationships? But this business, I now understand that what I did was horribly, terribly wrong. It was inappropriate, and it caused others pain. I'm deeply sorry, and I apologize. Well, I don't know. There's a Fox News poll out there, and there's a couple things in it. I don't know if you've heard this. They did what's called a generic ballot poll for House races. You heard about this? You're nodding like you've heard about this. The Democrats are plus 15 in the generic ballot poll. What this means is the Fox News pollsters have gone out there and surveyed their sample. Who do you intend to vote for in the next congressional elections, Republican or Democrat? No names, just Republican or Democrat. It came back Democrats plus 15. There are some people very concerned, very alarmed at this. It doesn't seem to make sense. It just doesn't seem to make sense unless the only way it makes sense is if Republicans versus Democrats does not include Trump in it. There is anger galore at the Republican Party. In that sense, it makes sense, particularly in the Senate, but also in the House. Remember, 90% of Republicans voted for Trump. There isn't any divide in the Republican Party among voters. If 90% voted for Trump, what do you think that 90% expects Republicans in the House and Senate to do? Be on the same page with Trump. Now, if they're not on the same page with Trump, and then you run out, you do a generic ballot poll for congressional elections, Republican or Democrat, and if you're not particularly happy with the Republicans right now, maybe that result wouldn't surprise you. Who do you think should be concerned about this? Anybody? Or is it too soon and it's nothing to worry about? It's nothing to get all excited about yet. It's way too soon. Or you think Republicans in the House and Senate need to be better be paying attention to it? Okay, well, let's add something else to this. If this poll is true, there is no way the Republicans cannot pass tax reform. Because if they don't, they are toast. If they don't, forget Obamacare. I think you can't forget it. It's cumulative. Nothing done on Obamacare. Some other big Trump agenda items, no wall. I think voters are frustrated. If this tax reform thing doesn't happen, the Republicans are in deep doo-doo if this poll is right. Here are some salient numbers. 69% is upset about how much tax they pay personally. But that's not the top frustration. 76% are very or somewhat frustrated with the complexity of the system and the forms. 78% feel that way about the wealthy paying too little. So that's why Trump's not going to cut their taxes. Right there it is. 78% are frustrated about the wealthy paying too little. So that right there is why Trump and the Republicans will not cut taxes for the upper 1%. 85% do not like corporations using loopholes to avoid paying taxes. 85% are frustrated the middle class is paying too much. Now, This is what they think. Oh, there's one more. I'm sorry, there's one more. The biggest rebuke is this. 90% are frustrated with the way government spends our taxes. That includes 56% who are very frustrated by that. So let's go through this. 69% upset about how much they pay personally. Fine. 76% frustrated with the complexity. Fine. 78% feel the wealthy pay too little. The top 1% are paying 40% of all income taxes. The top 10% are paying close to 60%. But obviously, people don't know this, or not enough. The wealthy are paying far more than their fair share. Far more. Now, the problem is that even after the wealthy pay their fair share or more, they have a lot more money left off than the middle class does. And that's what the middle class sees how much money people have left after they pay their taxes and think, that's not fair. I've only got X left and they've got how much? This is a testament to how successful class envy as practiced by the Democrats have been. 76% frustrated, 78% frustrated, the wealthy pay too little when the wealthy are paying almost all of it. 85% don't like corporations using loopholes to avoid paying. There's no loophole. A loophole is a tax law. Corporations don't pay taxes, period. They're able to recoup what they pay with increasing prices or any number of other things. But people think the corporations are cheating is what this means. 85% frustrated. Middle class is paying too much. The bottom 50% of wage earners in America pay nothing. The bottom 50% pay nothing, and some people who pay nothing get a refund. Earned income tax credit. And yet, in the Fox poll, 85% think the middle class is paying too much. When the bottom 50% isn't paying jack, and the top 10% is paying 40% of all of it, and the top 10% is paying close to 60% of it. So what people think is the exact opposite of what's really happening. And this explains the lingo that these tax cutters are using. It explains why the wealthy are going to be exempted from a tax cut. It's all right here in these numbers. Fred in Cleveland, I want to get to you. Get to this quickly. I know you can. It's important. What do you want to say?
Okay, Rush. I would like to say that I think that the Democrat Party has been waiting 25 years for an excuse to turn on the Clintons. And I think this is it, because the Clintons have nothing left to offer. The party hangs by a thread. Any thinking Democrat who wants to have a future in politics will turn on the Clintons, and I think there will be a frenzy to isolate themselves from the Clintons. I don't
know about 25 or 30 years. Maybe some individuals have wanted to, but I think overall you're right. I mean, if these people could not defeat an outsider, didn't know what he was doing ostensibly, then what good are they to the party anymore? Plus, if she provides the bad, negative face of the party by not going away, yeah, you may have a point. Thank you so much for being with us today, folks. We've got half tomorrow's program already prepped. Stuff we didn't get to today, and there's going to be stuff that happens before we get back. So be here 21 hours from now. And we'll rev up and do it all again. Can't wait. See you then.